Hello, and welcome to Meeting in the Sacred, a podcast where each week we invite you into diverse conversations about physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being in the pursuit of wholeness. My name is Danielle Chandler. I'm a Christ Path mystic and wholeness coach.
And my name is Teresa Noach. I'm an interspiritual enthusiast and published author with an eclectic Christian background. And no matter where you are in life, if you're curiously seeking, deconstructing, reconstructing, struggling in your faith, or just feeling lost, you are welcome here. This is episode 4, The Cryptic Life Files. It is also part 2 of our series, The Soul Transformation Process. In our previous episode, we covered the first 3 phases of this process as described by Michael Myrdahl in his book, The 5 Stages of the Soul Transformation Process. As Danielle and I have discussed our transformative processes, we discovered that while the existential crisis we experienced may have been very unique on an individual level, the results are the same in nature. Michael Myrdahl described the chain reaction as the following: dismantling, emptiness, disorientation, rebuilding, and a new life. I have not read his book, but came across its description online and resonated immediately with the author's explanation of the phases of soul transformation. So I cannot say whether or not we fully align with all of the writer's ideas. However, the first 3 of these, dismantling, emptiness, and disorientation, happen synchronistically in what we describe as the deconstruction phase. And as we shared in the first part of episode 3, called Existential Crisis, the deconstruction of our egoic belief system occurs during or immediately after such events. The belief system includes all societal and family influences that have forged the way we see the world, ourselves, and God. It comprises all of our experiences since conception until adulthood, usually middle age. For many people, this transformation is known as the midlife crisis, and for astrologers, as the Uranus conjunction. It is no secret to most, be it spiritual or not, that some type of global awakening began after the crisis of the coronavirus, which occurred during already volatile political and social climates. What has happened as an existential crisis collectively has uniquely impacted everyone, catapulting many of us into what some call the dark night of the soul. The dark night of the soul is the passageway to spiritual liberation and rebirth. It is a type of death that is often marked by a season of feeling confused and isolated. And in this proverbial darkness, we either are overcome or we come to the light, leaving behind our old selves, so to speak, and emerging as something, someone we may not even recognize. We eventually begin to remember who we are as divine beings, and the person we have become is who we have always been underneath the constructs of our ego. So the question becomes, Danielle, now what?
That's a great question. So now what?
Yeah.
I think with any type of crisis moving into rebirth, there is this moving through grief that we experience, and it's very personal, it's very individual. Every person's experience is very different, and healing in that space really takes time. There's these different layers in those seasons that reflect different parts of healing that we can step into. And I think that there's this honoring for myself that I came into in my own journey when I was going through my existential crisis, and how I kind of came to this place of acceptance, and I had to sit with that idea, because there's this from the outside, it can look like acceptance is giving up, that both of I think people can interpret, from the outside, looking in, is that person giving up, or are they accepting this? Because,
Right.
you know, sitting with both of those perspectives, it depends on an individual level, the connection that a person has. So if a person is like, I just feel like this is too much, I'm giving up, like, and they come to this place where they feel powerless and hopeless, it's totally different than, okay, you know what? I'm in this space. There is nothing that I can do to change my circumstance, but I am a human and I have
Mm.
some kind of capacity within me. I can do something. I don't know what that is yet, but I am going to sit in this space and walk this out. Everybody experiences this so differently. There's no black and white real answer to how every person will walk out their next steps. But I do know that at some point, because of how the human heart has been designed, that there is a wiring for hope and there is a wiring for
Mm.
love. And there's this constant like wooing in that direction. And, for me to say that, knowing where I was in my darkness and knowing
Mm.
that I literally felt like I was in hell,
Yeah.
it's really huge that I can say that now, because I couldn't even imagine coming to the place that I am right now. To me, I feel like it's a miracle because I had dealt with a lot of memory issues with my trauma, and I feel like over the course of the last couple of years, that has become healed in a lot of ways, and it's just been through these little, I would say, like, means of self-compassion, and the fact that, like, I would see I had memory issues and I wouldn't beat myself up, where, like, many years ago I could have stepped into that and been like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, like, you forgot this, and gone into all the shame that would have overtaken me and made my situation even more negative.
Mm.
But I just, for myself, stepped into more compassion and surrendering in that space invited even more transformation to, I feel, ignite me into a more authentic space of living, because I had to confront so many things, and um it was painful and it was scary. But I knew I had to do it because I am the kind of person that wants to live in the most authentic life I possibly can. So no matter how painful it was, I knew I had to do it. And here I am on the other side.
So what does surrender look like to you in
Hmm.
in lifestyle? Like what actions did you take? What does surrender look like as an action for you in this process?
That's a really good question. So for me, again, it just looked like looking at my situation. And I mean, to sit with, I lost all of my friends, like my community, why I was in Canada. I lost my husband. I feel like I lost my religion or spirituality, however you want to phrase that, my connection with my beliefs. To sit in a space where literally I felt like I had nothing. And sure, I had a house, I had clothes, I had food. I had my basic needs in that way. But these things that brought me purpose and belonging and, security in certain ways, like you said in our last episode, all of that was taken away because of certain choices not made by myself, but other people. And there was nothing I could do to change those things. And so I I came into this place of being able to sit with that and look at it for what it was and to just hold it, to be able to have these conversations with myself and to sit and with what I at that time could sense was my union with the divine, and to just be in the pain, to not try to create some sort of quick solution, to try to like self-soothe or to escape by going out and partying to numb out, or find some other guy that I felt would solve all my problems, or jump ship and I don't know,
Yeah.
escape somewhere, just like drive. I mean,
Yeah.
those are all things. It's like I could run away, I could run to something, I could try to escape this pain in whatever way my mind might try to associate with safety. But the truth is, no matter where I go, my pain will be. And no
Right.
matter where I go, my life is with me, and I can't escape myself.
Yeah.
So there, I mean, I did take many years to cultivate an inner awareness of what I like to call life skills and how to process through pain. But I never I never knew that I could go back to such darkness, So it even though I had developed all this character, I still found myself in this dark place, and surrendering the way that I just shared was literally the only way I felt I could survive. It was all I knew to do. Really.
A part of the belief system that was highlighted for me in this dark experience of, losing my sense of security, as we talked about in the last episode, in all these different ways, and my community, and going through financial crisis and all of that. One of the belief systems that I had to really hone in on was the tendency to think that I had done something wrong.
Mm,
The tendency to think that somehow I had stepped out of God's perfect will. The tendency to think that there was something I could have done better. And as I hear you saying, I never knew I could go back to such darkness. Like for me, I remember thinking to myself, I thought I was in a different place. I thought I was, yeah, being unable at first to wrap my head around the fact that that this didn't feel like goodness and mercy. Psalms 23 is one of my favorite scriptures to quote, and one of the reasons being is goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And that scripture, through so many different trials in life, brought me a sense of being supported and held no matter what. And here I was in a time of my life where I thought I was doing all the things right, where
mhm,
I cleaned up a lot of the things that I thought were wrong. Abstained from alcohol because that was a big thing too in our church. I told you, if you're in leadership, you can't drink, and there was this kind of thing growing up in the spending some time in the Pentecostal church. Any alcohol consumption is very demonized, but we also have a lot of family and friends that social drinking is normal, and to participate with any of that, I would have felt so bad. I would have felt like I was just making God sad, And so not only did I abstain for the purpose of wanting God to be happy with me, but also because I had this belief system that it was in and of itself demonic, which it's not, right? But it
Mm.
obviously is a powerful, it is a powerful substance that can become a dark problem. We know that. But I was in this season that everything went crazy for me in that particular time. I was doing all the things right. And I had been doing all the things right. And I was experiencing what I thought was favor, what I thought was, the hand of the Lord on my life, what I thought was all this, God confirming that my steps were in order, right? When I got the organization for Daughters of Naomi, it was like, wow, okay, this was in my eyes back then, this was me saying, God is looking upon me and saying, yes, you're going the right way, daughter. And so when everything went to shit, I was like, okay, so what did I miss here? Where did I go wrong? And I heard, here's the problem is that at one point you stepped out of believing that grace was enough.
Mm.
And somehow you stepped into believing that you were earning the things you felt were good. And now that, as the Bible says, it rains on the just and the unjust, now that you're experiencing a trial, many of them, and some storms, you default to actually what is a lack of faith in grace.
Mm.
You default to what have I done? So if I could actually ask myself, what have I done wrong? Then that also means on the other side of that coin is what did I do right? And if I believe the core values of Christianity is that you don't earn grace, if that was actually what I believed, then just by thinking I did something wrong, I was proving myself to not have the faith I claimed.
Mm.
And that is actually what sent me into a spiral of unraveling with my own core belief system because I thought, wow, what I professed at one point is being tested with my circumstances. Do I believe in grace, that it's not earned, that the love of God is unlimited and flowing freely towards all, regardless of what we got right or what we got wrong? Because what is right for me may not be right for someone else. What is wrong for me may not be wrong for somebody else. We are all learning at different paces.
Mhm.
And so that was huge for me to actually sit with the wait a minute. So now what do I choose to believe? Now it's a choice. Now I have to choose to believe, back to the other scripture that we like to quote a lot, that all things will work out for my good, right? So can I somehow look at this crisis and believe that this has good in it? Can I somehow see, what about the person that received a terminal prognosis? How do I see good in this? What about somebody who's lost a loved one or a child or a spouse? How do I see God doing good in this? Right. And I know
Mhm.
we're going to touch on that toxic positivity a little bit later,
Yeah.
but is it okay for me to sit in the fact that this is crap? It hurts, it feels like crap, and guess what, there may not be any big meaning to this. It could have really just been the short end of the stick today.
Mhm.
Or I can assign meaning to it. I can assign a positive meaning to it based on what I choose to believe about God. And so you said something in our last episode that I loved and I think is so powerful. And it's a very powerful tool to have in the toolbox in the reconstruction process of our faith and our spirituality. And that is, you said that everything, past, present, and future, is now.
Mhm.
And when I struggle with irrational fears of losing my children or my spouse, which I do, and when I struggle with that, or when I struggle with the grief of the good days being gone, right? The days that my
Mm.
children were 4 and 7, and now they're getting older, and things are different, and I miss those days, and I start being really sad and missing it as if it's gone and I lost it, and I remember, wait a minute. Every moment that you rocked that baby is now. Every moment that you change that diaper is now. Every 3-year-old birthday party, 4-year-old birthday party, every first step is now, right? But the
Mhm.
other side to that coin is that also being molested at 4 years old is now. Also being molested at 9 years old is now. Also going through a divorce is now. Also going through, broken bones is now. Also all of those sicknesses is now. Wait a minute. If the good stuff is now, that also means the bad stuff is now. But here's where the tool comes in. And that is that what I call good and what I call bad is the meaning I've assigned to the situation. So now that I've healed my traumas, I am able to reassign new meaning to them. And I think this is a really important part of reconstruction is looking at the fact that, yeah, all of the good, feel good parts of life are still now. You can tap into those memories like it's literally now. And you can feel the joy of that loved one that is now maybe crossed over, but you can feel it now. You
Mhm.
can touch them now. You can revisit that memory. That's the beauty of being human is you can revisit those beautiful moments, but we also can revisit the painful moments. So if we revisit the painful moments, or if we're in a dark night of the soul and we are already visiting all of those painful moments, whether we like it or not, then we can begin to assign new meaning based on what we choose to believe about ourselves and about God. And if
Mhm.
I choose to believe that God is love, then that means no matter how scary, no matter how painful, no matter how alone I felt, no matter how abandoned I felt, no matter how unfair the situation felt, if I choose the absolute that cannot be shaken, no matter what I believe about scripture or theology or anything else, but if I choose to believe, if I make this an absolute in my life, that God is love and that God is for me, then who can be against me? And for me, that has been the absolute that I cling to while everything else is shaking, while everything else is up for grabs, quite honestly, while everything else is up for reconstruction. I had to find an absolute. And I choose to believe that God is love. And I choose to believe I'm made in that image of love. And I choose to believe that no matter what I've experienced, no matter what pain I'm in, no matter what has happened, I have the power to reassign meaning to something that once had me in victim mode, once
Mhm.
had me in a place of feeling powerless. I now have the ability to choose the new meaning, and I am empowered now. I am empowered. Those memories never go away, but
Mhm.
I now have assigned a powerful meaning to them, and I have allowed those experiences to now create things within me that serve my highest and best in life. And once upon a time, they did not, but now I have the power to take those things in. So I appreciate you bringing, that part to my mind
Yeah.
about just being able to um, remember that everything really is now, but that we have the power to assign meaning.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, you hit some really core stuff there. And when we go through something like a crisis, whether it's existential or just a different type of crisis, usually the wounds from childhood, the limited beliefs, the attachment styles that we, chose in our childhood, all these things, these tools that we once thought were working, if we haven't discovered a different source or a different tool to help us, we're going to revert back to those things. So
Mm,
I think these opportunities in life, these crises that aren't always the most pleasant, they're somewhat painful.
mhm,
These are the opportunities to rewrite those narratives, like you were saying, from the past that we may associate an experience that's happening right now with the fear of an experience that we had when we were 3 years old. But when we are able to identify, again, put words to what we're feeling, to look at our core values and to look at our boundaries, to say, okay, is this thing that I'm feeling aligning to my core value, which is that I am a reflection of love? Does this expression look like love? Fear
Mm,
isn't, it's not a negative thing. I mean, God gave us fear.
yeah.
Fear, I think, is put into us in order to keep us safe. That oftentimes I've heard people talk about our primal instincts, how fear has been put into our body to keep us alive, from the primitive states of existence,
Yeah.
saving us from being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger.
Right.
like,
Right.
you know, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, we still register fear in our body. It's obviously a little different than it was back then, but we still are associating fear in our interactions with people in our daily lives. For myself, when I have worked with people doing, for instance, inner healing techniques and wholeness coaching, I sit with them in these types of challenging spaces that they find themselves in, where they are confused and they are asking really powerful questions. And I ask them, do you know what you're feeling? Do you have words for that? And like, how do we help you explore what it is that you're feeling so that you can get a better understanding, so that you can feel more connected to yourself again, so that there's a sense of almost being powerful and not powerless. Because I think there's a scripture, I forget what it is, but it goes like, my people perish due to lack of knowledge. And I think that's a universal concept, that when we don't have, understanding or words or ideas, we could even be talking to somebody through a text and like, we're missing some kind of information. And so often, our minds might want to fill in that blank. And
Mm,
it's actually a means of self protection, because we're trying to understand how to have certainty, but it's just an illusion.
wow.
And so being able to even identify if that is um, a thought pattern that you have, that can be an opportunity to fight in freedom. How do I have peace in the unknown? Like, I
Yeah.
don't need to know all the answers. um, and I think all of that is a part of the rebuilding process. And it's, how do we gently walk on the earth of our process? How do we gently love the process? How do we gently love ourselves in the process, knowing that there is a lot of unknowns, but that you are safe, and that in itself is a process, and it's okay, because it's all a part of the bigger process. And it's all important.
Yeah.
um, there is some kind of treasure in there that ignites a beautiful, whatever type of beautiful scene captivates your heart. Like, when you really have a relationship with all these parts of yourself, there is this inner type of romance, from a standpoint that is so profound. I think that's a reflection of when God says, taste and see that the Lord is good. It's just a little tiny taste, and you get hooked.
I think that's why I started looking at the way many people in Christianity connect with Jesus on this almost romantic level, as opposed to learning to have that connect on the inside of themselves. It's easier to connect
Hmm.
with this perfect image of God in a manly form, as a woman, especially. It's easy to connect with this idea of a perfect husband who provides and cares and protects. And I've seen a lot of women do it. I've done it when I felt like
Hmm.
I needed this godly man. I could just have Jesus. But in that process or with that perspective, I actually never really learned to love myself and feel satisfied with who God made me to be, which is whole.
Totally.
And I still was looking for something outside of myself, even if it's the Savior, the Christian Savior Jesus, who rose from the dead and came back to save us. It's still looking at Jesus on the outside of me in the context of what I think I need, again, on the outside of me, as opposed to what Jesus said I already have inside of
Mhm.
me,
Mhm.
which is the kingdom, and that it's inside of me, and that he came to reveal that kingdom. He came to restore that which was lost, which is my sovereignty, which is my divine connection with the creator, with Abba, with the divine mother. And you know, while seeing Jesus in that light for many years, served as a better way to cope in life than I had previously been coping, right? It
Mhm.
served as a better means of finding comfort. And so I wouldn't say it was bad, but I would say that if we stay in that place of always connecting to the Jesus figure that we think we need to replace a person that we think we need, then we fail to connect with that depth, with that, as you said in, previous episodes, with the heart center, with that divine space, the seat of our hearts, where everything is, as the song says, well with my soul. I think that's, for a lot of people, really challenging, and
Yeah.
probably because there is some avoidance on the dealing with the things that are in the way of being able to love the self, being able
Yeah.
to accept the self. There might be some things in the way that we avoid having to revisit or having to assign new meaning to. And in
Mhm.
order to assign new meaning to it, we do have to revisit it. And in order to assign new meaning to it, a lot of times we have to peel the band-aid off, or we have to readdress the wound with the truth. And that's not that the healing's outside of me with this conceptualized Jesus to meet whatever specific need I have at this time, but more or less it's that healing power of God abides in me through my faith.
Yeah.
And it's activated through my faith. It abides in me. I believe it's in us, but it's activated in our faith, in what we believe and what we profess and how we confess. And our lives are a confession. And that's why also in the pandemic, when I looked around and I saw that, as a whole, us as Christians, we were confessing everything but faith,
Mhm.
and everything but the power to heal, everything but. And so that's really what led me. And I am not excluded from that. I was having to look at my own life, my own actions, my own triggers, and be able to
Mhm.
see that I too, my own confessions had to be put through the fire. And I'm grateful for it now. I'm very grateful for it now, but it's not easy.
Mhm.
But the reconstruction part is vital, because otherwise we just continue to flounder, and we just continue to feel lost. And it really is important for us to be able to thrive emotionally, physically, mentally, relationally to others, in order for us to be able to be a part of a community again. Because a lot of times
Mhm.
it can be easy to get comfortable in isolation. So we're not created to be isolated. We're created to be in fellowship. And so in order to re-enter community again, which means that we have to now subject ourselves to more imperfect people, as we are also imperfect. We have to also subject ourselves to the possibility of even being hurt again, even being lied to again. We
Mhm.
have to subject ourselves to those things that were painful and scary, and that is in the world, and that is in the community. But as part of reconstructing, we've got to get to a place where, like you said, we're willing to just surrender and step back on the scene, with new glasses, the ability to see things differently. And what really helps me in re-entering community is just remembering, you know, what I project is what I am going to get back. And if somebody that I come across is seemingly attacking me for something or seemingly condemning me for something. I've been condemned for practicing yoga as a Jesus person. If I'm seemingly being gossiped about or talked about or shunned, it's not that these actions aren't happening. It's not that these people aren't doing those things. But again, I get to assign new meaning to the way I experience this.
Mm-hmm.
And if I assign to the situation, well, that person is hateful, that person is spiteful, that person is this, that person is that, at the end of the day, what I'm really saying is I am all of those things. So now I assign new meaning to the situation. I say that person is moving through this experience and they are also evolving. And at this current moment in time, that's how they see things. And that's okay because I know who I am. I know that I, as you said earlier, I am a reflection of love. So I see that, and that's what matters. And so, regardless of where other people are at, what they are saying about me is actually what they are believing about themselves. And so, I'm going to have compassion because I remember what it feels like to be in that place and to be projecting these things on others when in reality, it was really just how I felt about myself, or it was really what I was missing within myself. But now, as I'm reconstructing my values, my belief system, and my experiences in the world, I realize that others are still going to do and say things that I can assign hurtful meaning to, or I can assign positive meaning. And that is maybe that relationship's not for me today, but I don't have to take it personally. That person's growing and evolving, and it's just not our time right now.
Mm-hmm.
But it helps to be able to remember that we have the power to be able to, again, even in re-entering the community, assigning meaning to every interaction so that we don't take other people's actions personally. If we
Mm-hmm.
take them personally, it's because we still somewhere in our core believe that what they're saying or doing is a reflection of who we are. If it actually hurts us, it's because we truly haven't healed that part of our identity yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. And I think after going through, situations like you and I have gone through and shared here, um, it's usual to be on the defense because you actually are reestablishing your sense of reality and what your truth is. So there is, a heightened sense of awareness. Your nervous system is being mildly triggered, and you are, working through analytical processes because you're on the defense and you haven't been able to move into your heart space yet, where you're in that rest, you know, response. So,
Mm.
but it's all a part of it. And I think when we are able to identify that that's happening as we're moving forward, because from my own process and as I've worked with people, what I've identified is like people start somewhere. As they move along, they start to have these slight awarenesses like, oh man, I was really judgmental today and I don't want to be judgmental. And so that is the first step towards change, being aware. So they've become aware, they have sat with their core values, they know what they want to change, and then they figure out how they're going to do that. And, you know, you would take small steps because it's practical. And
Mhm.
taking small steps that are practical will actually help build your confidence and it will reduce stress, because when we put these high expectations on ourselves to try to be at a certain place in our journey, it can almost knock us down when we aren't reaching that expectation that we've like kind of set for ourselves. But I wanted to reflect on some of the other stuff that you just shared because I think it's really important. And, you had highlighted kind of this almost romantic relationship with Jesus. And
Mhm.
as I sat with my own journey and kind of, unpacked my relationship with Jesus in that state of mind, I actually had come to this realization because I was learning about different mental health things in that season that I realized, you know what? I've been codependent on Jesus. I feel like a lot of the church is codependent on Jesus. Again, this is not some black and white thing across the board. Each
Right.
individual is their own unique self. Each individual has their own worldview. Each individual has had their own journey, and it's so different. So there's a multidimensional element to each person that has come into this, choosing that is the way that they want to have a relationship with Jesus per se. And so when they, choose to have a codependent relationship, like you were saying, there are these kind of reflections of, oh, he's outside of me, or, God is outside of me. And you can still, though, have a relationship with yourself and tap into this inner type of strength that you believe is available. But yeah, there still is this dualistic thing. There still is this kind of separation. It's not necessarily, per se wrong. It's a
Right.
part of your process on an individual level. But I
Definitely.
think, something that I had realized during that time was I asked the question, so what is my capacity? What is living and breathing inside of me? What has been placed in me that I can tap into if I look just like love, if I look just like the creator, if I look like the divine? What does that
Mm.
say about what is in me? And how can I tap into that as a resource to live my life? And I think that is also a part of this powerful dynamic between, the dismantling and the rebuilding, the emptying and stepping into new life, is that we are given these opportunities in this life to, again, to have a relationship with ourselves, to be curious, to understand our capacity. When you have kind of peace and there is this kind of balance, I think the hope is that you do develop a new skill set so that when you are in these types of environments that you were in the past, you can come in feeling more powerful because you have sat with these questions and you do have some answers. I had no idea until I went through all of my deconstruction stuff that I had been gaslit in my church,
Mm.
with church leaders. But I
Right.
had no idea what being gaslit meant. It was only until I came into the knowledge and awareness of that term, and I was like connecting with the feeling of the words I was reading that defined it. And
Mm.
I was like, that's what I felt at that time. Oh my gosh. And so that kind of opened me up to be like, well, what else did I experience that I didn't know? And yes, there was some anxiety
Right.
that was attached to that. But it empowered me. It was not necessarily a fun experience during that time, but I felt like, wow, I have this awareness now. If I ever go back into a church, if I ever connect with Christians again, I know how to be, and I know how to talk, and I know what to share, and I know what not to share, and I know how to hold space for them because I used to be where they were and I believed a lot of what they believed. Like you were saying, this is their journey and their
Yeah.
path, and it's okay for them to be where they are, in their journey. But the things that are being promoted
Yeah.
in certain circles, there are some things that are actually harming people. And I think for the people who really are having a sense that they want to ask questions because they see the things that are wrong, it's a beautiful opportunity. Just like you were talking about with COVID and these tension points, like this, that is the beauty. That is, in a sense, again, like the tectonic plates of life pushing like our souls, and squeezing out these things that I actually kind of believe are answers to our prayers. I
Right.
think I think oftentimes we pray and we have these expectations of what we think the answer to that prayer is going to look like, and it doesn't look anything like what we thought it was going to look like. You know, I've seen oftentimes, like working at the recovery center I worked at, it's relational. When, you know, having two residents come together and they are in a conversation and one person rubs the other person the wrong way, you know, and I'd be like, well, what have you been praying? Because
Right.
I guarantee the thing that made you upset is, you know, the thing that you've been praying to heal. And it just so happens that this person is the answer to your healing, in the sense that you're able to look at the deeper issues of your heart, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. That's good. That's really good because I think, I know for me, speaking for myself, church life had become so comfortable in not that I didn't have, run-ins with other humans. It's going to happen no matter what. Um, but we had created a little community for ourselves. My husband and I had a couple couples that also had children, and we would do our Sundays together. And because I was in leadership, leaders hang out together. It often seems cliquey. Sometimes it is, but it is kind of hard to invite the entire church back to your house on Sunday. If you can't invite everybody, you can't invite two. So you tend to kind of get put into this kind of cliquey experience, even without intention. I know that happened for us. Like we didn't intend for it to be that way, but we had these families that we hung out with and their kids, and um, you know, things had gotten really comfortable. And so after going through the stretching and the existential crisis and coming through the wormhole, multiple wormholes, I now am able to observe other people that have created these comfortable little bubbles for their lives. But I do kind of laugh sometimes, knowing that if you're asking for your heart to be revealed, if you're asking for growth, if you're, as I said in the last episode, saying yes to whatever God's highest and best for your life is, you're not going to be allowed to stay in your bubble. And so I don't have to pop their bubble for them. I can, like you said, I can hold space, but the time will come where everybody's comfort zone will be challenged. And I found it also very interesting that through the pandemic, many people did thrive because what they didn't know they needed, they got. And that was more time with their family, more time at home, more rest, more simplifying. Maybe their finances were stretched and they had to reconsider what they were consuming, how they were spending their money. They came through it thinking, wow, I learned I can live on a lot less. I learned I can be happy with doing a lot less. I learned I learned we can be pastors of our own flock at home. We can shepherd our church, our own children. We can step up to the plate, and we can feed ourselves spiritually. There was so much that we were able to learn, but it wasn't without the triggers. So yeah, if you're asking for growth, if you're asking for healing, that was another thing. Even for me, it's like, well, I want physical well-being, praying for health and healing. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, if you're expecting to get what you're asking for, and you're asking for healing, but what you get is sickness. Now back to those core values. Do I believe do I believe I'm a reflection of love? Do
Right.
I believe that God is love, and that even though I asked for health, I got a sickness, I got a disease? Well, then how can I assign meaning, loving meaning to
Mm-hmm.
this? And I would say, for me, from experience, that getting the diseases, getting the diagnosis was the answer to my total well-being. I mean, now in the last year, I was catapulted even more into a deeper dive into my health because of some additional health crisis that came up. And I can't wait till we get into more health and wellness later on in other episodes, and we can talk more about that. But I've never felt, or even I don't think looked, as good as I feel that I feel and look right
Mm-hmm.
now in like 20 years. And I am at pre-baby weight. Never thought I would see that again. I have three children, 17, 15, and 7. And I had accepted that where I was with my weight was what it was. It was age. It was whatever. I had no idea that that I could feel and look as good as I feel and look right now. But it was those health crisis that led me to the discoveries of the healing power within myself that God invested in me when I was created and endowed with the image of God in my very DNA. So, yeah, I was not a victim. I was an opportunist. I was
Mm,
given a tremendous opportunity to put my faith to action and not just stand in a prayer meeting and expect people to put healing hands on me and then go home and do the same shit I was doing before and expect to be healed.
mhm,
It's like I had to be accountable for the knowledge, like you said a little bit ago. Without knowledge, we do perish. And without a vision and
mhm,
knowledge can be synonymous. Like, where do you see yourself being able to go, even though you've had this happen to you, even though you're sitting there with this sickness and this disease? Where do you believe you can go from here? And I genuinely refuse to believe that these triggers, these things that were coming, even though I was asking for one thing and then it seemed like I got the opposite, and it turns out those were the beautiful invitations to actually step into the manifestation of that thing that I had been asking for. But it is not going to come the way you think it's going to come. And it's not going to be a cakewalk. It's true. It's not going to be easy, but it is worth the work. It's worth the
mhm.
effort. It's worth the effort. And it's a beautiful mystery. um, Learning to surrender and say, okay, where are we going? What am I learning? What is this painful experience? What is this trigger trying to teach me about
Mhm.
where I'm stuck, where I'm playing old records?
Yeah, I think, and that's a empowerment mindset, of empowerment model. Something that I have thought about in connection with that is, whether you're in church and you hear all this positive, like, pray it away, or, you know,
Yeah.
put the, I don't know, blood of Christ on that or whatever. And then
Right.
you've got in our society this positive vibes only.
Mm,
I feel like you can, depending on where your heart is, you might not know, again, what your capacity is. You might not know how to apply your put your faith into action. You might not know, what's living and breathing in you, that you can actually be accountable for your life, that you can, you know, be a powerful person, and that you don't have to live in denial, or you don't have to be spiritually bypassing, and I think that facing reality, um, coming out of that whole mindset of being codependent on Jesus,
right.
and facing the reality of, wow, I'm amazing. What, like, look at all the stuff that's in me. Like, I can live this life powerfully. That puts a totally different perspective on how to move forward and towards and through these types of situations. And I wanted to know, okay, who out there in this world, like, has gone through hell, and how did they do it? You know, I didn't have, like, comparison, like, wow, your story is way more intense than mine. Like, you're making me feel so much better about my life. It was like, you know, it was like, oh my gosh, that is raw and real. Even though your story is different than mine, like, oh, I'm right here with you. I don't know you, but, like, I am feeling your story at such a deep level, and, like, it makes me feel like I'm not alone.
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, that's how we felt with each other.
Yeah.
We came across each other. I was in this deconstruction and reconstruction of my social media, and it was like I had to I had to really unfollow and block a lot of people that that were just toxic for where I'm at in this reconstruction and this new life that I've moved into. And there are a lot of people that I kept because, quite honestly, they're not offended by everything that I do. And if they are offended, they're not picking a fight on my page every time I
Mm,
turn around. So it's okay. We can still disagree and be friends as long as you can respect my boundaries and respect where I'm at, and I'll respect yours. But you and I met because, we were both in this place of looking for new acquaintances that are resonating with this reconstruction experience
mhm.
of our faith, and we had that in common. And so yeah, like our first couple of conversations just was so refreshing, and our
Yeah.
stories are different, our stories are different in a lot of ways, but it's just it's refreshing to be able to find, people that are willing to share, and even people that are willing to say, well, here's what I've gone through, and I really don't know much of anything right now. I know that, guess what, kid? We're still alive. We're still here. We're still standing, baby. And sometimes that's all we need to know is that we're still standing.
Yep.
And we do have others like ourselves that care and can laugh with us and cry with us and not judge us by our questions or even by our temper tantrums. I mean, sometimes I need to be able to have a tantrum. Sometimes I need to say a bad word and not be judged, like,
Mhm.
yeah,
It's real.
just
It's
for
raw.
real.
It's where
Yeah,
you're at.
that's what I'm saying. And that, that's what meeting in the sacred is. And I believe that I feel so honored to be able to be having these discussions with you, and
Mm,
knowing that we're putting something out there where people like us can relate. And I do believe that, especially given this episode and our last episode in this series, that our listeners are probably going through, some hard stuff, and or coming through some hard stuff, and are maybe um finding that connection with others that helps them to know that we're all going through this in different ways.
mhm.
Well, so we're going to get ready to close this out. Do you have any final thoughts before I do so?
Um, I just want to say be gentle on yourself no
Yeah,
matter where you are in your journey, and hold space for yourself like you would hold space for your friend, because you are just as important and just as worth it and just as amazing.
that's perfect. That's perfectly said. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening. You can contact Danielle or myself at meetinginthesacred.com. And we look forward to talking to you again soon. Bye for now.
Bye.